Welcome. My name's Natalie, and I'm an Akashic Records reader. So I read energy, and the way that I work with the records is in my human form. I'm a guide with energetics and past lives and things like that. But that's what my spiritual essence, that's what I do, do and have done in many time frames, realms. That might sound a bit overly mystical, but in other lifetimes and other timelines. And so we are going to talk about understanding energetics and then how to use energetics, how to get that mastery. And energy is it's unpredictable, it's both predictable and unpredictable, and that's what makes it exciting. That's what creates life. That's what creates new thought forms and manifestations. So we're going to talk about the reptilians. That's part of what we're going to be talking about, and I'm going to tune into it a little bit. It's not a collective I really choose to tune into, so it's not something I do honestly, because it's very often, because it's it's dark consciousness, it's evil consciousness. So before we get into talking about the reptilians, and I'll give you some examples of how I identify non-human beings, and I would like to point out that for the most part, you're going to come across people who are human and live from their heart center in various ways and forms, depending on their level of consciousness, their level of self-awareness, right? But reptilians, and as I speak about reptilians, there are a small group of reptilians who do not choose the dark, evil consciousness, oppressive consciousness, violence, greed, anger, hostility, etc. But they are of the few. So we're going to go back to the reptilians. But what I will say is, let me just think about this, because I don't want to go into something and not give it the time that it needs, right? So we'll go into it simply, okay? Just like we get parasites on the earth, there are energetic parasites, and how they attach is through unconscious states and through wounds. Now, they are much more able to attach if you're going through life like, I don't want to think about that, I don't want to deal with that, I don't want to think about that, I don't want to deal with that. Now, that's not to say that we have to think and deal with everything that comes up in the moment, okay? We need to be kind to ourselves, and sometimes we will, but it's about having that, you've set that intention, I want to change, I want to know myself better, I want to be happy, I want to feel good, right? So that in itself, you've set that intention. So it's not about needing to know everything, but when we are in those deeply unconscious states, these attachments have free game, really. It's the laws of the universe. And just like if a wild animal lay down and just let all of the other wildlife go at it, I'm fair game, that's essentially what we're doing unconsciously when we don't deal with our stuff, when we don't look to those dark places, those places that are just asking for our attention to illuminate them. Now, I say just asking because it's a lot, it's very emotional work, and we don't want to disregard that. And we also don't want to disregard that there are many situations that we were born into where we didn't have a choice to live in this way. You know, it was survival, and for a time it served us really well. You know, the psyche is very clever, the body is very clever, the ego is very clever, is essentially what I'm talking about. Is it's doing everything it can to keep you safe and keep you alive, right? But that's very primitive. That's very survival based. You know, we're not hunter gatherers anymore. Well, we are, but in a different way. You know, we're not living out in the wild, having to look out for lions and tigers and bears. Oh my. But you know what I mean. So that's a little bit about attachment. And you can listen to entity removal music. I listen to entity removal music every day. I work with energy, and I do energy clearings, karmic clearings, entity removals, exorcisms. So I have to be really up on this stuff. But yeah, you can listen to entity removal music, just repeating certain mantras to yourself. I am safe, I am protected. Not all day, every day. You know, it's you'll feel when you'll feel when your energy is compromised, because you'll start to get confused. You'll get tightness in your head. You won't be able to hold on to one thought properly. So in those moments, if you get those sorts of moments, and if you start to feel a bit sick, that's a really, really clear indicator. Now that could be one of two things. That could be a purging cycle. If you do a lot of meditation and yoga, then you're going to go through cycles where you're purging and you're cleansing the system. But more than one truth can exist at once, so that might be the case, but then there might be attachments wanting to come in. So if you start to feel a bit sick, you can pray, listen to entity removal music, or listen to heart chakra music, because love, the light, will always outshine the dark. Always. And know that deep in your center, because when we start to open up to energy and we see, you know, there's light and there's dark, and there's good and there's bad, and there's evil. There is evil. But we don't want to lose our empowerment in that, because we've been taught to believe that evil is this thing that's done to us, that it's outside of us, that it you know, you might just get shit luck and that sort of thing, and that is not the way that it has to be. That is not the way that it has to be if we understand energy. Do we have to flow with energy and go through it and ride it and go around the outside of it? Yeah, absolutely. It's like the most exciting roller coaster ever, but it's the resistance that causes suffering. So if we're able to flow with it and acknowledge, we'll get frustrated sometimes, you know, it's okay. It's better to let that out. It's better to let out the frustration and the anger and all that stuff, and then look to, you know, if you're feeling angry for most of the day, obviously that's stuff that you need to look at, right? Because there's your body, your mood, everything is telling you things. Everything within your system is trying to give you the best chance at true liberation, freedom. Anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So let's go back to the reptilians, and let me just tune into this. And I will also say that when I do my clearings, exorcisms, karmic timelines, shutting down the timelines, I always have a cross on me. For me, that's what feels right, and it really isn't linked to organized religion. It's faith. You know, for me, it's about my faith, and it's about protection, and nothing protects me like crosses do, and other things that I use. I won't go into that, but because of what I'm talking about, I wouldn't normally have this with me directly on my person, but I have my rosary on my stomach, because of what I'm talking about. And so I understand that attachments will want to try to come in, but they're not going to because, you know, through experience, I've learned how to not be scared and how to work with that energy, deflect that energy, and be so rooted in my power and love energy that there's nothing more powerful than that. So there's nothing to be scared of. But that doesn't mean you don't have to learn how to work with the energies, and that's what we're going to go into. So, reptilians. I'm sure I've met other reptilians, but since my spiritual awakening, which started in 2019, the beginning of 2019, and the energy is strong here, so let me just tune into that. So the Andromedans are here, and the Andromedans are protecting me. So I've done other videos on the Andromedans, and there's lots of information out there about Andromedan star seeds. Take what resonates and just store the rest. See what you think. Don't ever believe everything that someone else is telling you. It has to resonate for you. It has to land for you, whether that's like, well, I don't agree with that, or oh, that makes sense. You know, just question things and see how it lands. But yeah, with these reptilians, so my spiritual awakening started in 2019, at the beginning of 2019, and then at the beginning of 2020 I started working with somebody. So it was coaching and learning pranayams and things, and I actually saw this lady. She's a YouTuber, and I saw her through him because I think they did a video together. Yeah, and at first, so this is something to be aware of with beings who are not of the light, are not human. Not that doesn't mean that everything of the light is human. That's not what I mean at all. But we are right. We're here on this planet Earth right now. So I'll speak in those terms. So those that are not human, they are not of the light, but they can fake the light. So when you first come into contact with a reptilian, it's going to feel a bit like you're intoxicated. You might think, oh my goodness, they're just so lovely. And oh my goodness, they just radiate light, and and you just trust them straight away. So that's an indicator, because, you know, when you first meet someone, it's not like you're expecting the worst, but you're casing the situation, right? You're sort of just taking it in, observing them, and you do this mostly subconsciously. But with a reptilian, that's what we're speaking about specifically now, you will feel intoxicated, you'll feel a bit kind of dazed and confused, but they can get you completely drunk off this false vibration, and then you're so in it that when you start to see their true self, I mean, it's a really similar to, it's a narcissistic dynamic, really. They love bomb you, and that can be in any form. It doesn't have to be romantic, you know, professional, friend, date, whatever. And then you remember that feeling of how you felt in the beginning, and you start to question yourself, which is common, right, in a narcissistic dynamic, like overly question yourself and be like, well, they were really nice, well, maybe it's something I've done, well, maybe if I just do this better, maybe if I do that better. You don't want to do that with a reptilian, trust me, you do not. So let me tune into if there's anything else. Bad smells. So if you start to notice bad smells, when you're thinking about that person, when you're with that person, or when you're speaking to that person, then that's an indication. A bit random, but if you have flowers or plants and they're getting really dry or dying quickly, because these beings are, they're not life, they're decay, they're like a cancer, and that will show up in some shape or form in your reality. Okay, so this is reptilians. Okay, this is really closely linked to demons. I mean, they're not all demons, but you know, for it's kind of inconsequential, really. It's a force that does not have your best interest at heart. In fact, the opposite. It wants to feed on your energy and gain power through it, and try and find some physical way to harness their energy in the physical, because what I'm hearing, technically they're not allowed to incarnate. So then that makes me think, well, how did they incarnate? Yeah, and I'm hearing through unjust means, you know, to put it lightly. But we're not going to go into that today because it would be too extensive. So those are some ways you're feeling that kind of giddy trust, where you just blindly trust somebody where you wouldn't normally. You're kind of in a daze, you know, like when, I don't know, when you really like someone, you can go into a bit of a daze, but it's very hypnotic. So you'll kind of feel yourself being like, what? You know, because you're not quite with it, because I mean, they do hypnotize you to a degree. But when you're able to know about these beings, and when you're able to feel into the energetics of it, you're way smarter than they are. You really are, even though you've forgotten that in some aspects. You're way smarter than they are. And even before knowing about energetics, you had ways to keep them at bay to an extent. But the new earth energies, you know, we were living in a very unconscious way, whereas the new earth energies, new consciousness, enlightened consciousness, means that the world's going to look very different, and energy is going to be much more prevalent when we're not going to be so focused on the 3D. And by not being so focused on the 3D, you know, connecting more with our spirit selves and connecting with each other's spirit selves, seeing the essence within each other, the love within each other, before seeing the person, you know, before getting too carried away in the details of the human body, you know, which we can do. We can over-identify with it massively, and identify with it when it comes to each other. So things are changing, so it's important for us to be aware. And as we were talking, and I've got, honestly, my journey, I've got stories that can make your toes curl, with how I opened up psychically and how I experienced dark energy and psychic attacks and things like that. But I needed that, because, and I always felt it was very guided and protected, even though it was scary, because, you know, that egoic sense of me has really broken down. You know, I don't see death in the same way at all as I used to. And so, yeah, I really needed those experiences. And when we talk about demons, when we're talking about the reptilians, so that's evil alien consciousness, this is very linked to demons. And this is the other thing that I want to touch on. So, I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of energetic sex, but those of you who've experienced it, I mean, it can be amazing. Trust me, it can be amazing. And within that, you need to make sure who you're sharing your energy with, okay? And as you get more used to it, you'll feel into that, because, you know, the beings that you want to be intimate with are usually going to be beings that you're familiar with. But these sex demons they, they feed on that. So, when you're horny, they feed on that, and so they're never kind of too far away. But if you cleanse your energy, breath work, and if you meditate, and if you do yoga and other well-being practices, they just aren't able to, because if we think about the parasites, right, and if we think about our energy like a net, things are going to get stuck in your net like throughout your day, energetically you're going in and out and all sorts of things. And especially if you are on the spiritual path, then you're traveling interdimensionally all the time, so you're going to pick up debris, right? So you need to cleanse your energy, and you can cleanse your energy by breath work and chakra work and meditation and all of the things I've listed. And I know I sound like a broken record because I mention these things a lot, but they really, really do work. Now, there are times when we all need support sometimes, right? Okay, and so part of what I do is, I've mentioned, I do clearings and energy healing and energy activations. So if you have a really strong attachment, you're going to need some help. If you have a very strong evil attachment, you're going to need some help. And I try to be careful the way I word these things, because I'm not trying to make anyone freak out, and I'm not trying to make anyone unnecessarily scared. But it is important to be aware of this stuff. And the fear that you feel, that's a healthy response, because that's your indicator. Yes, this is compromising my experience. Yes, this is making me act in ways that feel like I have no control over my life. So we were talking about the sex demons, right? So if you're having times where you don't feel in control of when you're getting turned on, or when you want to orgasm or things like that, these are the times you need to be aware of these energies. And it's when they come in, it's going to be a very alluring energy. It's going to feel very seductive. You're going to want to do, you're going to think you're going to think you're going to want to do what you want to do, and there's an element to that. But when it's that really strong, potent feeling, like, I don't know, everyone has had that boy, like that one person, a boy or a girl, at some point in their life where they just don't feel like they have control around them, right? So it's like a really intense version of that. You'll see, this is just because of what your consciousness will associate with these types of energies. So you might see devil horns through your third eye. You might get a visual in your mind, and your blood will feel bubbly, but in a strange way. I don't know how else to better describe that. It will feel strange. There will be an eeriness to it. So you'll feel that sexual pull, but there would be an eeriness to it. Now, I don't know what would happen beyond that, because I've never engaged with a being like that, but intuitively, tuning into it. Yeah, this is when possession can occur. Now, this is when possession can occur, but there are times, again, I'm not trying to scare people, but I am going to be honest, because I feel this so deep in my soul that this needs to be talked about, that if we knew about this stuff and this was just normal, life would be very, very different. The world would be very, very different. So if you are tricked, or sometimes it can be that a member of your family, and it could be a generation ago, or it could be within your generation of the family. So it could be your grandma, but it could be your grandma's grandma, or your grandma's grandma's grandfather, who made a deal with a demon. So to get something, um, usually money and stature and things like this, they would have made a deal, and part of the deal would have been a grandchild. Um, and this happens quite regularly, honestly. So let's talk a little bit about the symptoms of possession. And you can hear my breathing got a little bit heavier because I feel very passionate about this stuff, that people should not be living confined by demonic activity, and that it's become so part of our culture. You only have to look to, a multi-millionaire who, I'm not going to be specific, but perhaps owns a lot of companies, and the way that they conduct themselves, the way that they work within their companies, what they use their money for. So I'm talking about not good stuff here. This is demonic activity. I'm not saying that anything bad that anybody ever does is demonic. That's not what I mean. There's a different energy to it, okay? And I could go further into that, but it will get too long. So let's go back to possession. There are different levels of possession, okay? But if you're feeling sick a lot, feeling drained a lot, bad smells are really indicative. If you're having a lot of like sewage leaks and things like that, remember what we were talking about, that infestation, that cancer, that disease, that will show up physically. What else? Breathless, I'm feeling breathless, so like breathlessness, lots of colds, I'm feeling stuffy in my nose. So if you feel like, I know of people who they're just sick all the time and they don't know why, they'll get better and then they'll get ill again. It's like a constant cold. That is a symptom. Seeing the colour orange, which is linked to the sacral chakra, sexuality, like we were talking about. So demons in general can gain access through sexual energy. Yeah, so this is linked to the sacral, but they're also showing me oranges. So does this mean if the person is seeing lots of oranges? Oh, okay. Yeah, that they're giving me they're creating a manifestation, actually, that for those of you who are not sure and maybe just don't know about this stuff, or perhaps what you've been taught religious wise makes you fear this type of stuff, which is totally understandable. I had a lot of fear around it, and I still do. When I'm um finding out about the dark forces, the evil forces, and doing clearings, I really, this is where you need your ego. When I go into a clearing or an exorcism, I prepare myself, and I put on my spiritual armor, and there's no getting through, and that that I am in my ego. I am in a healthy part of my ego during those clearings, because it's a necessity. So just an example that the ego is not your enemy. The ego can be your absolute best friend. And what you will have, honestly, is just an intrinsic knowing that something's not right, something is off. And I want to just say to you, this is not your fault, okay? Even if it came about from decisions you made. It's not about self-blame, it's about awareness. So try to think of it like, oh my goodness, wow, yeah, that makes sense because I made this decision and I made that decision, and then I met this person and this happened. Try not to beat yourself up about that. It's just knowledge, and you have the knowledge now. You can't know what you don't know. You just can't. So it really is nonsensical to beat ourselves up, hand up as a person who is so prone to doing that. But really, it's nonsensical because it's just awareness, it's just knowledge, and then we get to make different decisions, which is, we get to do that every day. We get a fresh start every day. So, if any of these things are showing up in your experience, first of all, I'm sending you a massive hug and so much love, because it is not easy to deal with, and life will feel like an uphill slog, So please do contact me. Please make contact. My Facebook and my Instagram will be in the description below. We can speak about it further. You can ask me any questions that you have. And of course, I charge for my services. This is my business. However, if finances are really challenging and, just not giving you the freedom that you would like right now, please do still contact me, because everybody deserves support. And I've been there. I do not come from a wealthy family, so I really want to emphasize this, because I know, as being that person at times, even when that's offered, I cannot take it, and I'll think, oh well, somebody else would need it more than me, and oh well, I'm okay. Like, please don't be polite about it. I'm saying this because I mean it. If you need support in any way, if you just want to ask questions, you're not sure if you want sessions, that's okay. That's okay. Just please reach out and know that you're not by yourself. Feed into my energy. See if you feel like you trust it. You're not going to trust it completely. And that's what the questions are about, okay? I welcome them. I really do. It's good to question. So I will leave all of the information below, as I said, and I'm wishing you a great day. And this isn't about getting scared. This is about self-empowerment. This is about understanding self, understanding energy, and self in relation to energy, because this whole universe, multiverse, however big you want to take it, because it's big, you deep down know how all of this works. You just forgot. And a lot of fear will come in, because it's your natural egoic response to something that feels unfamiliar and a little bit scary. But beyond those scary moments, true liberation. So let's try to make friends with our fear and see what our fear is trying to tell us. So if you have that strong feeling, what are you trying to tell me right now, ego? What are you trying to tell me, fear, that I'm not seeing? And I promise you, the results will astound you, and you will get a better understanding. And through better understanding, you get more peace. Have a great day.